Well, I'd like to welcome everybody today. I think we're all really excited for this program. I'm the moderator today. I'm going to introduce all our panelists. We have 4 panelists from 4 different agencies. We're going to start with Kyle Armstrong. Kyle is a graduate of the University of Illinois, where he received a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. Kyle works for the Illinois Department of Transportation. He's been there for 22 years, both for the District 6 office in Springfield and the Central Bureau of Operations. He is currently the engineer of traffic operations, where his duties include developing statewide policies, procedures, and programs for the installation and maintenance of traffic control devices, including traffic signals. He's helped lead the statewide effort to review and develop comments for the proposed 11th edition of the METCD, and is on the National Committee of the Uniform Traffic Control Devices. While at District 6, he's held the positions of Traffic Signal System Engineer and Traffic Operations Engineer. He is also a licensed professional engineer and holds a PTOE through ITE. Our second panelist will be John Nelson. John is from Lake County Division of Transportation. John holds the position of engineer of traffic, and he's responsible for the planning, design, operations, and maintenance of traffic operations and infrastructure at Lake County, including traffic signals, signing, striping, safety, permitting, and transportation management center, along with the Lake County Passage program. John holds a BS degree in civil engineering from the University of Iowa and has 21 years of experience as a traffic engineer, including the last 15 years with the county. Prior to working for the county, John worked for the Illinois Department of Transportation District 1 as an area traffic signal engineer. John is a licensed professional engineer and a member of APWA, ITE, and ITS Midwest. Our third panelist will be Bill Edson. Bill is the Assistant County Engineer for Design Engineering at DuPage County Division of Transportation. Bill is a longtime traffic engineer, having spent 13 years as a consultant and 7 years in the traffic engineering positions, both at Lake and DuPage counties. In his current role, he oversees a team of 19 engineers, technicians, and support staff, and is responsible for roadway projects, traffic operations, and highway permits, along with the county's 220 miles of highway and 345 traffic signals. Bill is a graduate of Purdue University, where he earned a BS and MS in civil engineering and studied under Dr. Darcy Bullock. Bill is a licensed PE and is in Illinois and Indiana, and holds PTOE, PTP, and RSP certifications. Abraham Emmanual is a Deputy Commissioner for Traffic Safety and Technology at the Chicago Department of Transportation, CDOT, where he's responsible for intelligent transportation systems, projects, traffic signals, and red light and speed cameras. Abraham has over 20 years experience in implementing transportation and smart technologies for CDOT. Abraham's ITS project portfolio includes an advanced traffic signal management system for implementing active traffic management in Chicago, multiple traffic signal interconnects projects, citywide smart signal initiatives, Midway Airport Smart Corridor, and transit signal priority projects. In 2019, Abraham developed the traffic signal technology blueprint for Chicago to streamline and modernize technology at traffic signals early in completed work this year. Abraham holds a master's degree in computer science from the University of Chicago and a master's in business administration from the Illinois Institute of Technology. With that, we're just going to kind of jump into it. A little idea of what we're going to be doing. We have a number of questions we're going to ask each panelist. We're going to try to keep everybody to 2 or 3 minutes within reason to answer each question. And hopefully we can keep everything about 10 minutes per question. And we look to do this for about an hour today. So starting with the first question, basically we want to describe what's a little context and background of your agency's infrastructure. We'll start out with Kyle. And I would just say, how would you best describe your agency's existing traffic signal infrastructure?
Thank you, Tom, and thanks again for inviting me as part of today's discussion. As far as IDOT's existing traffic signal infrastructure goes, I'll provide a little bit of background information. So IDOT consists of 9 separate district offices, and each district office has some degree of latitude in how they design their signals and what types of signal equipment and signal structures they would like to install. So as a result, we have quite a mix of different signal controller and cabinet types, along with different types of signal hardware. We primarily use Econolite or Eagle Siemens controllers, but there is quite a wide variety of different models between those two manufacturers for specific signal controller equipment. The majority of our signalized intersections are interconnected and are part of a closed loop system for various timing coordination and signal remote signal monitoring. We have over 3,000 signalized intersections along the state system with a wide variance in overall age of equipment. We still have some signalized intersections where the signal structure equipment is in the 40 to 50 year age range. Signal timing and programming is primarily handled by district office staff and through our signal coordination and timing fund, while maintenance is primarily handled by local agencies, by municipalities, while district office staff handle maintenance of any signalized intersections that may be located in more rural areas. In addition, we do have some variance in how rapidly newer technologies are implemented throughout the state. Some district offices are more comfortable than others when it comes to trying new technologies, but also funding constraints play a role in how we're able to actually implement some of the new strategies. And they restrict the amount of technological implementation that we can actually perform in certain portions of the state. We are continuing to work towards upgrading outdated signal components and structures, and also installing more fiber optic lines for interconnected traffic signal systems, and to bring signal information and signal data back to local traffic management centers and to the local district offices. So basically our existing infrastructure is a real hodgepodge of different controllers, different equipment, and different ages. So that can actually be somewhat of a hurdle for us to actually implement different technologies and get a lot of our signal equipment upgraded to where it needs to be.
Thank you, Kyle. Next, we'll ask John Nelson the same question. John, how would you best describe your agency's existing signal and ITS infrastructure?
Thanks, Tom, and thanks again, everybody, for this opportunity to talk about our system here. So in Lake County, we do have mostly a modern system. All of our intersections are, for the most part, like a TS2 type of cabinet. We do have communication to all of our signals, whether that's through cellular or wireless point-to-point radios or wireless point-to-wire towers in the region. We also use cellular data to communicate with our signal equipment. As far as communication, we also have a switch in every cabinet. So we are, I believe almost all of our locations now do have a switch in their cabinets. So those of you that have done design for us before, if we use the word digis or a terminal server, then we are not using those anymore. So all new locations have switches. We're connecting as much as we can in the cabinets. So that's MMUs, controllers, battery backup systems are all being connected to our network. And then we use various ways to maintain our system. So we do a lot of network maintenance ourselves. We also have a system integrator that helps us with maintaining the network portion for our signal system, but we also rely on a maintenance contractor as well to maintain everything. But again, it's a fairly modern system, and I'm quite fortunate to be working for a place that had very modern like that.
Thanks, John. Next, we'll throw it to Bill Edson. So go ahead, Bill.
Well, sure. Like everyone, I want to say thanks, Tom, and thank you to ITE for the invitation to speak today. I would say that DuPage County's traffic signal infrastructure is transitional. I think much like IDOT, we have a number of intersections that still have 1980s and 1990s equipment, including mast arms and controllers. One intersection still has cloth cable. As far as we know, it's only one that we have. We are working hard to upgrade our signals and modernize our network. From a controller perspective, we've been very successful using CMAQ and other federal funds to bring our equipment into the 21st century, quite literally. We have currently more than half of our controllers running either an ASC3 or a Cobalt on the Econolite side, or an M50 or an M60 series on the Eagle Siemens side. And we have projects in design right now that are going to increase that number to roughly 80%. So we continue to focus on modernizing our mast arms as well to improve signal visibility and extend the life of our intersections. And we're improving our fiber infrastructure and expanding it to not only connect our far-flung systems and standalone traffic signals, but also to get rid of our dial-up modem connections, and to look ahead to connected vehicles and any other future technologies that may come along.
Thank you, Bill. Abraham, you're up. How would you best describe your agency's existing traffic signal and ITS infrastructure?
Good morning, and thank you, Tom, and glad to be speaking with Illinois ITE today. So like others mentioned, we have a mixed bag of signals in Chicago. I would say out of the 3,000 signals we have in Chicago, about 2/3 of them are fairly old. It's 40 to 50 years or more older. And the third of our signals, I would say about 1,000 of them are what we call our modernized signals, but I suspect maybe only half of those 1,000 really can be called modernized or MUTCD standards. Our oldest signal phrase per our records is from 1924, and it's still running. It's an electromechanical controller. It's got about 150 to 200 of those in the city. Most of our signals operate independently. They don't depend on a central signal system. We use time-based coordination and the central clock to keep them in sync. And those of you who have worked with signals know how difficult it is when you have signals that are 40 and 50 years old to keep these clocks in sync. So keeping these systems up and running is a major resource constraint for us. We do not have enough folks to go and look at these 3,000 signals on a daily basis. So just maintaining the operations and safety is the priority for us. So in fact, there's a new signal timing needed that it actually goes down in priority. It may take a long time to put that signal timing in because our crews will be trying to get those damaged signals or damaged signal heads and replace them and so on. A majority of signal, but we have been making progress over the years, and I'm glad to talk about most of those later today. But in terms of the infrastructure itself, we've been able to upgrade the signal heads to LED. We upgrade signal timings to have lead, pedestrian, interval, and all reds in majority of the locations. And we do not have any actuation loops any longer. We use video actuation. And many of the changes planned in the next few years, so we hope will take us to the new age in mobility.
Thanks, Abraham. Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, each agency is, you know, kind of across the region. I think you all kind of know what each other's doing and kind of evolve, I think, as a region. But yeah, each agency, it's kind of interesting to see the differences as well. So our next question is kind of similar to this one, or it builds off, you know, what your infrastructure is like, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the title of today's webinar, innovations. So if each one of you could speak to, you know, what kind of new standards that you have maybe recently implemented in, you know, in your requirements for design of traffic signals, let's say, as well as maybe some upcoming standards and design details that as a designer or a consultant designer would be interested in knowing about, you know, as they come up. We'll start with you, Kyle.
So some of the new standards that we've issued recently, probably the biggest one was a policy that we recently issued on the use of accessible pedestrian signals at state signalized intersections. We are now going to be requiring accessible pedestrian signals for new signalized intersections and for any planned contract upgrade signalized work at existing intersections. And this was issued to be in compliance with and to provide further clarification on the latest draft accessibility rules for ProWAG. Now, we know ProWAG still is not final at this point, but it has been considered to be a best practice, and we felt it was best to try to develop a policy that would allow us to be more in line with ProWAG when that does become final. So that's probably the biggest policy we've issued recently. In addition, about a year ago, we issued some guidance for implementing leading pedestrian intervals, which allows pedestrians to receive the walk signal prior to the adjacent green intervals. So it basically allows pedestrians to get a head start out in the crosswalk and allows them to be more visible to traffic. This guidance consists of a scoring system to help determine if a leading pedestrian interval is appropriate for certain signalized intersection approaches based on data such as traffic and pedestrian volumes, crash history, and the configuration of the intersection. Future standards and policies will likely be focused on when the updated MUTCD is issued. Currently, the MUTCD is still in the federal rulemaking process. IDOT did submit over 300 comments to the draft of that proposed update, and many of those comments did involve traffic signals. There were several significant proposed changes to traffic signal design and operations in that document. So we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on that as that progresses. We are also working on a guidance document for the implementation of bicycle signals, which are now allowed in the MUTCD through an interim approval. So we're looking at a guidance document on what's the best proper methods for implementing these devices in the field. And finally, I also sit on a national pooled fund study looking at traffic signal clearance intervals. Basically, we're looking to see if there's any other methodologies that should be considered or any other types of data that should be considered for calculating and implementing certain yellow and all red times for our signalized intersections. So that's a basic summary of the standards and policies that we've recently issued or will be issuing here in the near future.
Thanks, Kyle. That's all very interesting. John Nelson, what new standards has your agency either recently started implementing or maybe some new ones that we could see soon?
Can you still hear me okay? Because my neighbor's landscaper decided to show up. I hope you can still hear me okay.
Sound good still.
All right. So yeah, as far as new standards, so we do closely follow the IDOT design guide. So as far as, I mean, we do have our little tweaks and stuff, but as far as for the consultants and doing any design, we want to stick with the District 1 design guide to start with. And then we'll go from there. As I mentioned, we are focused on Ethernet controllers now. So all of our locations, we have a switch with an Ethernet controller. So the terminal servers or the digis are no longer in use anymore. Also, as we look to our system and as network equipment changes, we are moving away from communication cabinets as well. We no longer need that separate cabinet that has air heat exchangers, and all the network equipment is becoming hardened now. So we're able to start doing that and move away from those. So we did our first one of those recently, where we've gone away from that COM cabinet and put all the equipment into one larger signal cabinet. So, and then as we continue to look at design as well, we are always looking at communication and especially redundancy. So there may be fiber that's already in place, but we're looking at how can we use that fiber and how can we add redundancy to our network. So we may look to add fiber in different directions from that project. And then just so everyone understands as well, as as we're looking at our design, we're always looking at the bigger picture. So even though a project may be one intersection or two intersections, we're looking at the bigger region as well. And that's why we utilize someone else to handle our message system integrator to handle all the fiber splicing plans and the network equipment drawings. So we kind of, once we get the signal plan close, then we add those sheets to your projects. It allows us to get a bigger picture of what's going on and how we can keep everything communicating correctly. We've been utilizing, I'll get to it later too, but as part of our resurfacing jobs, using those to kind of upgrade technology as well. So instead of just replacing loops, we may go to a different type of detection, whether that's radar or video, but a non-intrusive detection of some sort is usually what we're doing. So we're moving away from cutting loops back into pavement. We are looking at putting new longer mast arms in as well, as Bill mentioned, not only for more better head alignment, but we are moving towards flashing yellow arrows. So we have a corridor going in right now as our first one in Lake County, but we are also on some projects adding mast arms a little longer, so they're prepared for a flashing yellow arrow instead of coming back later and realizing we need a mast arm that's 8 feet longer and have to rebuild the whole intersection again. So again, as Kyle mentioned, we are the ADA push buttons. We're going to be looking to follow IDOT's guidance on that as well, and adding those push buttons on all future construction projects as well. And I think that's about it.
Sounds good. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Bill, what kind of new standards either recently implemented or upcoming that you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, we're very similar to Lake County in terms of kind of our approach to things. I think like John said, you know, as a designer, we're really looking for that initial submittal to come in following the IDOT design guide. You know, there's a few little differences that we have, and you know, we can help kind of point the designer to where those differences are. But if you guys make a submittal that, you know, touches all the points in the District 1 design guide, it's going to be a much simpler review and a lot less back and forth between us. We've been doing the APS, accessible pedestrian signals, at all new traffic signals for the last couple of years, just exactly in line with what Kyle was talking about with IDOT. So basically, if we are touching more than one button, we're going to put APS at that entire intersection. One button, it's been kind of a maintenance replacement. That's not a big deal, but just trying to stay ahead of it and be ready for ProAg. You know, Kyle mentioned the leading pedestrian intervals. We use those selectively. You know, we don't have a formal process for deciding exactly when and where to put them, but on request, we'll look at it. And if there's a location that makes sense, we do that. Obviously, the controller has to support that as well. We also, as Abraham mentioned, we're not putting new loops in for overall projects. Again, if there's one leg of an intersection that's being redone, we might put loops back. But if we're touching the entire intersection, we're not using loops. We're going with cameras or radar. We want to be ready for the bicycle detections that are going to come. We want to be able to handle different operational needs and not be tied to the physical placement of the loops. John mentioned the flashing yellow arrow projects that are likely coming. We have one that's in design in phase 1 right now. We are looking at longer mast arms when we have left turn lanes, just like John said, so we're not having to rebuild the entire intersection. I think the thing I want to stress for the designers is, you know, we know what the communications network is going to look like. We're not expecting you to come to us and tell us perfectly what that is. So, you know, that's our issue, and that's our standard that we're trying to develop internally with our network integrator. And so really, we're not looking for that type of you know, design to come out of your shop. You guys need to focus on getting us a good initial submittal that we can really give good comments back and come up with a design that works for us and is something that you as a designer can manage. So that's kind of the standard, you know, I guess the current state of the practice for us at DuPage County.
Great, thanks, Bill. Abraham, what could you add in terms of innovations that you recently or will be doing in City of Chicago?
Like others mentioned, we follow the IDOT standards. And on top of that, in 2019, we developed a technology memo or some sort of a standardization for the hardware and technology that goes at the signals. So that's what we are following now is the minimum requirements that we want to have at the signals. That includes ATC controllers, Super P cabinets, central communication, primarily using cellular network, unless we have existing fiber, continuous traffic counts, live or recorded video from the intersection, APS, like others mentioned, and battery backup. So those are every new and modernized signals will have these features. And on top of, we are also looking at making ATS-PM also a requirement for all the new signals going forward. And like I mentioned earlier, video detection is so primary detection method now. And we're also looking at a web-based interface to the controller, so we can take we can look at the controllers individually and work remotely, work on the controller as a requirement going forward. No new fiber. It costs us a lot of money in the city. It's cellular network, just relying on cellular network, and utilize other city agencies that have cameras in the city for video surveillance, or use the detection camera we have for limited lookup or recording of incidents from the intersection. We are primarily a NEMA TS2 type 2 cabinet environment. We're trying to move that into type 2 TS2 type 1 cabinet. It's still a work in progress. All our signal timings were interval based, and now we're replacing that with NEMA phase-based timing. The cost of building a signal in the city, it's getting close to about $500,000 or so. So it's really hard for us to replace thousands of signals or modernize them in a short time. So what we are working on is retrofitting of some of these major intersections with some of the technology components we need. We are retrofitting about 100 locations with cameras, fisheye cameras, and video processing capabilities, so we can count vehicles, pedestrians, bikes in real time, and also provide actuation detection and limited video access to these intersections.
Great, great. So our next question is going to deal just kind of with coordination, and I think you know, all agencies kind of talk to each other, and it's a good thing. But I guess the question will be, you know, what level of interagency coordination does your agency participate in regarding traffic signal and ITS? And how would you rate that importance of such an effort? We'll start out with Kyle.
So we are currently working with various local agencies in the Chicago region to help develop a Chicago Regional Arterial Traffic Management Center to help control and coordinate traffic signal systems and operations between our IDOT District 1 office and various counties and municipalities in the Chicago region. This is still very much in the early stages of development, but this will be a very important effort to help improve overall traffic efficiency in the region, especially to help mitigate traffic congestion that develops from expressway crashes, and to help implement integrated corridor management and further our statewide transportation systems management and operations efforts and strategies that we're trying to implement statewide. This will likely involve multiple agency staffing within regional traffic management centers, to allow for better interagency communication and coordination when it comes to programming traffic signals and handling overall traffic congestion in the region. So again, it's going to be a very important effort. for the Chicago region, and hopefully we can also expand that to other regions of the state and to our statewide traffic management center as well.
Thanks, Kyle. John, what would you add to doing interagency coordination now, with Lake County, working within the region?
Yeah, as Kyle has mentioned, we do participate in the discussions as far as looking at the District 1 or 2 operations and traffic management. Also, myself, Bill, and the other county traffic engineers, as well as IDOT, we get together regularly. Probably once a quarter, we get together and we talk about various issues, traffic issues, whether it's, not only signals, but signing and striping issues as well. But with signals, we talk about various specs we're using, various technologies that we're trying out, each other testing, and we do have a really good working relationship between the counties and with IDOT as well. And then we're just working with IDOT on projects. As projects come through, they understand our system up in Lake County, and they understand that communication is critical and different infrastructure, and they want to work with us, make sure that they're replacing what needs to be replaced, and then also, and if we want anything else different out there, give us an opportunity to add something extra to their projects.
Sounds good. Bill, what level of interagency coordination does DuPage County follow, and what kind of importance do you put on that?
Well, I'll start, Tom, by saying that I think cooperation and collaboration is hugely important to moving the region forward in the traffic world. We had the opportunity, and I know a lot of you heard about it, both at TES and prior ITE luncheon just before the pandemic kicked in, when we had the opportunity to connect to Naperville. And now we're moving towards connections with Aurora and with Lombard on some upcoming projects. And these efforts definitely bring value in sharing data and coordinating our operations. We're just starting to even understand actually how we can use those connections, but the concept is great. And I think the future of where we can go with that is very strong. We do have to keep in mind that we're not operating in a vacuum. And if our neighbor to the west, for example, operates on a different platform than us, and our neighbor to the west is Kane County, and they do operate on a different platform, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we may have to meet halfway in order to make a connection with them and leverage the benefits that the collaboration would bring. If we connect 1 or 2 signals onto their system, we need to understand that their standards and practices may govern how the system operates. Having said that, John mentioned, the county traffic engineers getting together. We obviously also have, the RTOC group that meets through the CMAP program, and that gives us all, the industry and the agencies a chance to, get some face time and collaborate on different issues that affect the entire region. We'll also, we're also very supportive of the program that Kyle mentioned to bring a kind of a regional concept to District 1 for traffic operations that not only help, on the IDOT arterials, but also kind of help pull together some of the counties and the major municipal roads. And we're proud to be part of the discussion with that program as well.
Sounds good. Abraham, what can you add to doing interagency coordination with CDOT and in the region?
So Tom, one of the things I've often heard in Chicago is our environment is very different from state or the suburban counties, whatever it may be, but I think the coordination is key. Idot has taken the lead on it with the TISMO Council and other initiatives. I think there needs to be more discussion and more coordination on what agencies should be doing and what standards we should follow, and there could be more communication between systems and even people. So I think from a CDOT perspective, there's more coordination at an individual level. If I need something, I call Kyle or John Nelson or Bill, and but there's not an interagency, a formal coordination between the agencies. But the CMAP and other different conferences, like the TEST conference recently ended, that give us the opportunity to talk and understand each other, but more formalizing like the TISMO council is, I think it's the right approach here.
Sounds good. Yeah, and I agree too. Being involved in some of those committees over the years too with you guys, it's such a value, I think, to the region, and to help kind of grow what we're all doing, whether we're on the private side or public side, and in different agencies and locations. It's just very valuable to kind of learn what everybody's doing and kind of hopefully move one direction. So the next question has to do with improving mobility and safety. And I think a number of things innovations you guys have probably already touched on in some answers so far. But, Kyle, we start with you. In terms of new standards, can you maybe just speak to, how you're improving mobility, which is a lot of what we all do, and then safety?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I discussed as far as new policies and new implementations falls right in line with this. The new APS policy we issued, the leading pedestrian interval guidance, bike signal guidance document that we're in the process of developing. Those are all intended to help the safety and mobility of both pedestrians and bicyclists. As far as general overall safety for signalized intersections, IDOT is looking at implementing more protected only left turns where capacity will actually allow us to do that, in an effort to reduce angle and left turning crashes at some of our signalized intersections. For intersections where protected only lefts may not be feasible, we are continuing to implement flashing yellow arrows around the state, which have shown to help reduce left turning crashes compared to the standard green circular indications that we've used historically for permissive left turns. So, similar to Lake County and DuPage County, we are continuing to implement the flashing yellow arrows around the state. And it's all in an effort to help reduce those left turning crashes, which seem to be so prevalent statewide for our signalized intersections.
Thank you. John, anything you can touch on in terms of mobility, improving mobility and safety in terms of new things you're doing?
Well, for safety and mobility, we already talked about the APS and the flashing our arrows. Another thing that we are looking at to do with for safety is looking at our snow, and especially the snowproof signals. And so we have implemented the, for lack of a better term, the snow cones and all of the red indications that are on the mast arm at all of our county-owned traffic signals. So those are up. I know we didn't have a weather event that caused an issue for about 5 years, and then we had 2 years in a row we had major issues, and now last year they didn't have an issue, so we'll see. And hopefully there's not an issue, but if there is, we're gonna see if these snow cones will continue to improve visibility of the reds. As we see it, the biggest issue is the red. People don't see the signal and they keep just driving through it. Well, if it's green already, it's not really a big issue, but if it's red, they're driving through that signal. It's not a safe condition. So we have the snow cones out there, and we're gonna see how they work out for us.
Very good. Bill, at DuPage County, anything you want to touch on in terms of specifically for safety or mobility?
We've got a lot of those same items that Kyle and John just talked about that we're doing as well. Obviously, we're working to install, like I mentioned earlier, new detection, above ground detection, radar and video, PTZ cameras to help us be able to, evaluate trouble spots for congestion, or, if there's actually an incident on the road. We're never going to be quite at the level of Lake County or the toll road, but just having that ability to make some determination about what's going on the street. Hopefully we can help address mobility through that, and also the secondary crashes hopefully go away if we're able to manage the backup more effectively when there is an incident. I think the other thing, like we talked about just before with the connection and the collaboration between agencies, how many times our traffic goes through our intersection and crosses over to an IDOT intersection and then crosses to a municipal intersection. trying to break down those barriers in our operations and collaborate, because the driver doesn't perceive that as 3 different agencies jurisdiction. It's all one commute for them. So I think moving ahead on some of those bigger collaborative, connected type of concepts really is going to help drive the mobility aspect.
Very good. Abraham, any safety or mobility type of innovations with traffic signals that you want to touch on regarding what CDOT's doing?
Sure. And Tom, I think it's a balancing act between safety and mobility at the intersection, especially in the city environment. If you give more priority to safety, or mobility would suffer. The more time you give for pedestrians or LPIs or all red and all that is have an impact. So how do you find the right balance, or how do you find things that are not necessarily competing each other, but is complementary to the other? So from that perspective, we've been looking at, what are things that are, that's the most important for us to help with both. That's first thing is data. So collect as much data you can, number of vehicles, number of crashes, even collect data on number of times you repaired the signal, how many times your signal head was out, or a repairman has to go into the cabinet, how many 911 calls you received, or even how many permits were issued from that intersection for different type of work. So we are collecting all type of information on activities at the signal, so we can build a comprehensive view of what's going on and use that to decide to make decisions on various things that we do. So a fisheye camera, for example, that we are installing, it's counting data, pedestrian and bike 24/7, 365 days. So that's a lot of information. We can see when a pedestrian is jaywalking, when they have the no walk sign is on, or how many vehicles are running a red light because the camera is connected to the controller, and the system knows when the vehicles are going through in relation to the phase they are passing through. So that type of information help us figure out if there are any type of safety issues or any mobility issues as well for that intersection or for that approach. So we're also looking at connected vehicle technologies, how we can, now that your camera can see pedestrians are at the intersection, how can we send that information in proactively to drivers using connected vehicles technology? So we are looking to pilot some of those safety ideas, but especially with large vehicles and buses, and putting a screen up on the bus, new screen on the driver's side, and they could be alerted of a pedestrian on a crosswalk in their direction of travel. So there are a lot of things that are in the horizon. We are taking 1 or 2 different use cases at a time and piloting them.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Abraham. The next question deals with challenges. We all have talked lots of challenges, and I know you guys do too. And kind of what do you need to tackle next, and what phone calls you're getting in, and what fires you're putting out. But what are the biggest challenges facing your organization in terms of integrating new signal technologies? We'll start out with you, Kyle.
So I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty common response, but funding and staffing are going to be the biggest challenges for traffic signal and implementing traffic signal technologies. I would say right now staffing might actually be the biggest concern, especially with the increased number of signal technologies that are being developed and deployed. We've talked about advanced traffic signal performance measures, ATSPM. That would be a concern because, acquiring all of the signal data doesn't mean a lot if you don't have someone on staff to actually analyze that data and react appropriately to it. Our district signal staff is relatively low in numbers, and the issue is worsened in that the duties of ITS equipment maintenance and programming, such as surveillance cameras, maintaining fiber optic lines, and our dynamic message signs, that all falls on our signal personnel. IDOT really does not have dedicated ITS staff. So our signal personnel ends up having to maintain both signals and the ITS equipment. It is also a challenge to find funding to replace and upgrade our outdated equipment. We have established a dedicated fund for replacing older signal mast arms. But again, this funding is very limited and it can only handle really a small percentage of what we need to replace. And that's only going to worsen with prices continuing to increase and supply chain issues being able to actually get the equipment or the structures in a reasonable amount of time. So the ability to replace outdated equipment and implement new strategies can really be difficult with the funding constraints that we've seen. I'm hoping that with further development and implementation of a TISMO program plan for the state, that may help with future funding. We're also still looking over the language of the newly passed federal infrastructure bill. We're hoping that there's a lot more opportunities for funding signal technologies and ITS in the future through those federal funds. So hopefully there is help on the way when it comes to funding, and we certainly hope to increase our staffing numbers in the future to be able to keep up with all of these new signal and ITS technologies.
Thanks, Kyle. John, what kind of challenges are you looking at Lake County, just trying to stay ahead of the game with technologies or get ahead of the game?
Yep, and I think your question is spot on, Tom. I think trying to stay ahead of the game. I think just the changes in technology. So, it's not usual for traffic signal to get equipment changed in 5 years. Like we saw a signal, you guys were mentioning earlier, you got signals out there from the 80s and 90s working fine. Well, when you get to network equipment, I mean, for encoders, our system started in about 2005, and we're putting our third version of video encoders out there right now. And so that's every 5 years, 7 years, we're changing technology because of things are no longer supported. Technology is moving so fast. Changing cameras from analog cameras to IP cameras, switches are changing, communications changing, encoders change. Like technology just moves a lot faster in the network world than the traffic signal world. We all know traffic signal technology does not change much. So that's a big challenge. As Kyle mentioned, I think skilled staffing is another big issue. Just with all the different things we're doing, a lot of data coming in, it's not just staff in general, but skilled staff. And it's something that we are struggling with right now as well. So just trying to find staff to continue to, with the technology, continue to have things moving forward. As far as some other challenges we're facing are security concerns. We have a large network out there. And I start looking at security concerns, and as IT and the county's IT department starts looking at things and doing different various scans, we're seeing devices that we all get from our vendors that are not secure, that they have opportunities in them to allow for people to get in and do things they shouldn't be doing. So we are looking closely at that. We are lots of firewalls, lots of just review of our network in general to keep it as secure as possible. And so that even includes changing the equipment out. So removing equipment that no longer is secure and talking to our vendors and saying, hey, this controller, these certain things, these features on this controller need to go away. They need to be closer to the security requirements that we find today in industry in general. We also look at challenges to us as far as just testing new items. With new technologies, there's also requirements to test new things out. You don't want to not try something just because you don't have the personnel or the ability to do it, but you see a new technology and say, well, should we be looking at that one? If we have the resources to do that. And once we bring on a new piece of technology, now we're required to support that. And it's not just supporting just one more additional for video detection, for example. If we try new video detection, we like it, now it's just another system that we have to support with a different software package to support, with a different training that goes involved with that. So as technologies change, testing changes, support changes. And the last thing we're even talking about even earlier today is how to stay relevant as an information provider. You know, the kind of passage prides itself on getting that information out to the public, but as smartphones, as Android, as Apple continue to change things, all of a sudden, you know, where are we relevant? What makes sense for us to continue to do, and what do we need to give up and let other people third parties take over? So it's just a fast changing world, and we're just trying to keep up with it.
Yeah, that is the key, isn't it? Abraham, anything you'd like to add to regarding challenges? I know you guys at CDOT kind of have constant challenges as well.
Sure, like others, we have plenty of challenges on. But fortunately, funding is probably the last thing I have to worry about, but certainly staffing. We do not have good number of maintenance people and also skilled staff. Engineering, it's really hard to get good engineers hired, and sometimes it takes us years to get people hired in our organization. And John mentioned technology. Technology is constantly changing. It took us 5 years from pilots to implementation for recent work we are currently, which we are implementing right now with Maya Vision and traffic counting in smart signal technology we are implementing right now. It's 5-year time frame, but 5 years in the technology world, it's completely a new generation of systems and products will be available. So, you know, how nimble you can be, how fast you can be. It's that you have to have the right people to do that. And also, you know, like others, it's a decentralized environment, and we have maintenance by one group, design by one group, construction by another group. So how do these different groups work together? It's always a challenge in the public sector. Right? Then for Chicago, the age of signals, we have really old signals. So a left-hand arrow project might end up being a full modernization. So now, you either do that left-hand arrow, don't do it, or completely modernize the intersection. That's the dilemma we have. And then if we go for a large project, it can take several years before design and build is completed. So most of the time it comes down to, we focus on what's, are we meeting the minimum safety requirements? That's where the focus is, and always being, like I said earlier, a signal timing change can sit in the to-do list for several months, and even never implemented, because our maintenance crews are always running and fixing what's broken. In a given day, in a given week, we could have easily have 3 signal cabinets wiped out in traffic crashes. So that's priority. Or 3,000 signals means tens of thousands of signal heads. You could have at least 100 of them not working at any given day. And so you go after that first. Then comes the signal timing change. So that's the challenge.
All priorities, right?
Yep.
Bill, challenges that you face in DuPage County regarding a lot of the same things I'm sure that the other gentleman has mentioned, but anything that you can add?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's staffing at the end of the day. We have a limited amount of time in the day, and with my team, we all have a traffic engineering background, right? When we were learning to be traffic engineers, we were not learning database management, advanced coding, networking. We know some rudimentary electricity, hopefully enough to not get bit when we work in the cabinet, but we aren't going to go program a Cisco switch or write the Python code or develop the tools that will allow us to present a dashboard to our leadership. So what can we do? Today it's not much that we can do because of the fiscal constraints. And like John said, the challenges with finding skilled professionals who can really kind of navigate both those worlds, work in the IT world and the traffic world. And we'll train them up in the traffic world, but finding IT people who are willing to kind of give up some of what they really enjoy doing and come over and play in our sandbox is hard. It's all about continuing to look ahead, I think, and get as much support as we need to be able to expand our capabilities as our system and our industry evolves. And sometimes that's going to be individual staff. Sometimes it's going to be a consultant and contractor support as we get the financial resources to bring those folks on. But it is definitely the challenge to just keep it all moving.
Yeah, that is the key. Yeah, I see that too. That's a good point regarding IT specializations and, you know, coming into traffic. We kind of see it with some of the vendors a little bit, but I do foresee that too, more and more in the public agencies. You're going to pick that up, and if you have the room for the staff, obviously, but as well as, you know, contractors. That's just you talked about we talked about cyber security a little bit too. You know, I think that's going to bring that more into as traffic engineers. Cyber security for so long was really not thought about as much, but I think bringing in these other expertises, like certainly like information technologies, is something we're going to see more and more. So the last question I have is kind of going in the future a little bit, just regarding innovations and priorities that your agencies may integrate over the next 5 to 10 years. So just taking your crystal ball and looking ahead a little bit, seeing, you know, beyond what you're thinking about now, is there some greater things? We talked about certainly ITS and you know, traffic management centers in the region and things like that, which will hit that time frame. But yeah, any other things, you know, looking 5 to 10 years that you're kind of thinking about? Let's start with you, Kyle.
So some specific implementations and innovations we would be looking at, and John actually talked about the snow cones. We are looking at implementing those in District 1 as well. We're also looking at heated elements to actually melt the snow within the visors of the signal heads. So we're just looking at various ways to prevent that snow and ice from packing in underneath the visors and blocking the visibility of the individual signal indications for a safety benefit. District 1 is also looking at installing and retrofitting an existing cabinet and converting it from a 120 volt to a 48 volt signal cabinet, which would be considered to be touch safe for our signal crews and contractors working within the cabinet. And it would greatly reduce, if not eliminate, any shock or electrocution hazard within the cabinet. It's actually our understanding that the state of California actually requires anyone working within a signal cabinet with 120 volts to be a registered or certified electrician. Using a 48 volt cabinet eliminates that issue because, again, it would be considered to be touch safe with no electrocution hazard. So we're definitely looking at implementing those types of cabinets, testing them out, and seeing what types of benefits those cabinets have to offer. We mentioned ATS-PM. We have a few districts that have already implemented that technology. We'll have a few more looking to implement that within the next 5 years or so. We're also continuing development and use of advanced traffic management software as the use of master controllers and closed loop systems begins to disappear, as the vendors and manufacturers are no longer supporting the master controller concept. We need to be able, obviously, to have remote signal monitoring through our traffic management software. And IDOT is actually looking at procuring in the near future a statewide ATMS system so that our statewide communications center and all 9 of our district offices are running off the same traffic management software platform. Finally, we also want to continue to expand our fiber network. We are currently in the process of creating a continuous fiber backbone loop throughout the state, which will allow our individual district offices to communicate directly with our statewide communication center through fiber for communication redundancy purposes. So I would foresee within the next 5 or 10 years having actual fiber connectivity from our statewide hub here in Springfield to all 9 of our district offices statewide.
Very good. John, 5 to 10 year time frame. What do you you
Yeah, so-
envisioning?
Yeah, I'm just going off of what Cal just finished with there with connectivity. I see within 5 to 10 years, the regional traffic management center, or even just regional connectivity between the traffic management centers, whether that's a brand new one that's being built or us with other counties. I see that as something that we'll continue to push forward with, where we're able to share information, be a backup center for each other, disaster recovery kind of system, or just operating in for various other areas in the region. I see that as something that's priority and that's going to continue to grow as the systems continue to grow and networks continue to grow. Kyle also mentioned ATSPMs. I see that as, I think we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with those. There's so much data coming in, and I see that data being used to become developing more real-time adaptive systems, even looking at weather responsive, as weather changes, started seeing how the speeds on our roads change and being able to adapt the signals to that new travel time along a corridor. And so we don't have that traffic that's normally driving 45, driving 25 in snow, and they're hitting every red light. So how can we work with our technologies and with the weather and adaptive systems and ATSPMs to have our system become even more efficient. And as we all know, connected vehicles are coming. And so continuing to work with that and continue to just research what that's going to look like and how do we play in that field, or as Bill put it, play in that sandbox. But we know the vehicles are going to be talking, and what kind of information can we share with them, or are they going to share with us, and how's it all going to play out?
Sounds good. Bill, 5 to 10 year time frame. What are you envisioning?
Yeah, right now, looking ahead, our biggest priorities are to get as close to 100% Ethernet-based communications with our signals as practical. Having Ethernet-capable traffic signal controllers, ATCs. I like where Kyle's going with the IDOT looking at the 48-volt cabinet. That's definitely something that we're interested in. We just didn't want to be the guinea pig on it, but we're definitely on board with the idea. But getting ATCs in all of our intersections, just to have those data collection capabilities, the advanced, functionality that comes along with that, and to have fully modernized physical infrastructure. Just trying to get some of this outdated, mast arms and conduits out of there and be handling everything in a, the right way, the way we want to be doing it. We want to continue to partner with our peers, the counties, the cities, the villages, and IDOT. Like I said before, the regional effort that Kyle was talking about is something that I think a lot of us in Chicagoland are really looking forward to being able to be part of. And when we hit all these targets, I think we'll be in an ideal position to handle connected vehicles, like John mentioned, and other emerging technologies that come along. That's going to help keep DuPage County and Chicagoland at the forefront of the traffic sector.
Thanks, Bill. Abraham, what do you think about innovations here beyond what we're all having to deal with right now, 5 to 10 year time frame where Chicago will be?
Tom, I think Bill and others mentioned data and ATSPM. So
yeah,
that's going to be our priority areas. Collect as much data on signals, real time or historical. Use that information to drive your decision making. So at least I want to get in the 5 to 10 years time frame, at least 1,000 of our signals we should be collecting continuous data from those signals, and then we can think about adaptive or responsive signal systems. We are not quite there yet, but that's something we have been actively thinking about. Should we go adaptive, or should we just collect information and make manual changes? That's a question we'll answer over the next several years. Other things Kyle mentioned about different cabinets, and we're looking into reducing the footprint of the cabinets. That's one major issue I should have mentioned in our challenges. section in Chicago. We don't have enough real estate space at our intersections. Reducing that footprint or even hanging the controllers like New York does, the cabinets on a single pole will be a huge advantage for us. Right now, there's an existing rule in Chicago is we cannot put a cabinet within 5 feet of a water main. And there's a water main at every single corner. And if you move 5 feet away, you are probably not going to meet some of the accessibility requirements for putting the switch, the push button, and there's a lot of issues. You will be hitting some buildings' foundation and so on. So reducing that footprint is key for us going forward. Other ATSPM related goal, I think INRICS have demonstrated is they have a nationwide scorecard, which we can look at 300,000 signals and say which ones are performing poorly. Whether that's accurate or not, but that's a great model. We have 3,000 signals. We are never going to have enough people to look at these 3,000 signals proactively. But if some system can tell me these are the 100 signals you need to focus on, I don't know if it's level of service or whatever score we are going to give based on their performance, those are the 100 signals we want to actively improve. That we are not able to do right now, but that's in our wish list of things. Another wish item in the wish list is the cost of operation. So we are moving away mostly from mostly into a cellular network for communication, very few fiber. So that means we have a monthly cost for maintaining those cellular network lines. We're looking at how we can reduce that cost. Either we have an existing smart signal, smart lighting network that's been implemented in Chicago for connecting our street lights. So we are trying to see if we can tap into that network and bring our data in at a fraction of the cost of what we are paying currently. And 5G is around the corner, so we also want to see how that is also going to change the way we communicate with field devices. And lastly, everyone mentioned connected vehicles. That's we want to pilot a few different ideas. Now with the DSRC sort of not one of the primary ways of communicating, or US DOT is backing down on the DSRC commitment. So we have to figure whether it's CV2X or whatever other technology is going to be the connected vehicle choice in the future. But maybe our plan is to, in the next few years, pilot 2 or 3 different technologies and come up, maybe select something for the future.
Sounds good. A lot of wish list items. Well, what I'd like to do next is we have some questions and take some questions from our audience. I'm going to go into the chat area here. We have one question here from John Wirtz. He's asking, this is for Kyle, is IDOT's LPI scoring guidance available online, or will it be at some point?
It is not currently available online, but we can make it available, and I'm more than willing to send it to anyone who would be interested in that scoring system. It is based very closely on some previous research that was conducted by the City of Toronto. Their scoring system is very similar to what we ended up using for our guidance document. And like I said, it takes into account several items such as traffic volume, VC ratios, PED volumes, crash history, and the overall configuration of the intersection to basically come up with a score. And if that score is above a certain level, then LPI is definitely something that could be considered for a particular intersection approach. So like I say, currently it's not available online, but we can get it available on the IDOT website, and I can definitely send it out to anyone who would be interested in that document.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Another question comes from Dan Brinkman. He's asking about something we've heard for a while here. District 1 Signal Design Guide. Obviously, 2009 was the last time it was actually issued. is there anything, I know probably all you guys are involved with some of the coordination efforts that have been ongoing, but I guess to Kyle, is there anything you can offer at this point where District 1 might be with that signal design guide in terms of issuing it? Or is it still a work in progress?
It's still very much a work in progress. I know District 1 continues to look at updating that document, but like everyone, we're all a bit short-staffed and we're having trouble finding the time to actually get that document updated to where it needs to be. But it is definitely something we're continuing to look at and continuing to work on, and to make sure it's updated with today's standards and technology.
Very good. And I think kind of to the rest of the panel too, I think everybody has their own versions of their design guides, and maybe just a general question, I don't want to say the challenge, but to keeping that current. And I know that's a challenge obviously for District 1. Is there any, new additions or updates or anything that you guys are expecting soon? Or have you done something recently? I'll start with Bill.
Yeah, I'll say, for DuPage, we're trying not to routinely update our specs. The specs are a big part of what's driving the design guide for us, the little variability, between us and the state. We're trying not to do constant updates of our specs and only when something's really needed. We are definitely happy to talk to a consultant, on the front end to kind of understand what's different about what we're looking for versus what has really been part of the recent District 1 guidance. I think there's the guidelines, right? The 2009 edition that Dan referenced, and then there's been some guidance information that's come out maybe every couple of years that's informative along with the specs, and that's kind of been the updates that haven't been captured in a document, right? So where that's at, and then where we're different. For example, we do not use the Super P or the Super R cabinets, and so rather than going through the process of putting those pay items in and labeling them and everything else, we can tell you that up front that, hey, these are some of the areas that were different. But again, like I said earlier, I think the starting point is if you're following those basic ideas, the conduit runs, the handholds, the layout of the signal equipment, that's at least a good starting point for us to have those preliminary comments to you. But like I said, happy to have a conversation offline outside the submittal process, just to kind of smooth things over and facilitate that early submittal being the best it can. I don't want to review stuff any more than you guys want to get comments back on it. It's just faster to have good, clean submittals that we're all happy with. So it's something we're willing to spend the time up front to take care of.
Sounds good. And I know that's the case with all agencies. Speaking as a consultant now too, that that coordination, picking up the phone, set up in a meeting, just getting that verbal. There's a lot of stuff that you're not going to get from, like you said, updating a guide every so often, and that it's just some quick things you can get by just some good coordination. John, anything on that front in terms of how you guys communicate your changes? And it's pretty similar to.
It's very similar to what Bill was saying. I mean, the county did put out a design guide, I think, before I got there, so it had to be even older than the 2009 version. But again, it is very spec dependent, and we do try to. It's very similar to Bill saying, keep our specs, update them, not constantly, but put them out when we need to. And then and I agree with Bill as well, being just staffing resources, it's hard to go through review 3 or 4 times. And I know the consultants don't want to do that. We don't want to do it. So I think we can do it in advance, and even after the first submittal, after you have comments, just sit through and talk through them all instead of just going back and forth. But I've done that successfully, and it's worked well, but also meeting ahead of time and talk through the design is also quite helpful.
Sure, absolutely. Abraham, and anything on that front? I know you guys, you mentioned you've updated your.
Yeah, pretty similar for Chicago. one of the things we looked at recently is with just the approval process of the design. So there's a lot of delay on our side. The back and forth could easily take 6 months to a year just to get the design approved. So we looked internally, there's a way we can have the consultant do this for us, so we don't have to be signing off on that. But we sat with the lawyers and they looked at the relevant rules and regulations, and the response to us was probably not. In the case of a lawsuit against the city, the requirement may be that someone from the existing, at least based on city ordinance, a city person have to approve it. Now we're still back to square one with the delay. But we'll continue to explore options, or maybe we need to have a different ordinance that allow a third party with the right credentials to approve designs.
Is there maybe a difference between reviewing and approval, in terms of consultants doing review?
Right, the approval is to sign off. It's the person who is taking the responsibility, and our engineers do not want to sign off unless they fully review it.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. Well, I think with that, I think that's all the questions we had today, and it's like everything in the chat room.
It looks like you had one
question on
more.
the chat.
Tom,
We
you have
got-
one more come in on the Q&A, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Bill. Is IDOT going to require or allow flashing yellow arrows, and if so, when? Kyle, that's to you. Oh, that's D1. Yeah. Anything you can add to that, Kyle?
At this time, IDOT is not requiring flashing yellow arrows at any particular intersection. It's totally up to the district to decide when and where they want to implement the flashing yellow arrows. I would say at this point, the only way that we would absolutely require FYA would be if it's put in the national MUTCD as an absolute requirement or as a standard. But otherwise, at this point, we're not absolutely requiring it. It would just be determined on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that is it. Well, I want to thank our panelists today. Everybody give a nice virtual applause. I think this was really kind of very informational. I think that was our goal, to try to kind of share. Yeah, I think again, putting everybody themselves in the place of a designer and consultant, and trying to get different agencies we have to do plans for in terms of signal design, and there's a lot of things going on with technology, not only technology changes, but also standard changes. And Kyle talked about the upcoming MUTCD and all the different things that continue to come out every time that manual is updated. So it's good to kind of know some of these things and what some of these agencies are thinking of. So again, I want to thank you guys. It was really great to hear your comments. Andrew, do you have anything to add? Or?
No, I think you got it all covered. Of course, thank you to our speaker, and thank you for everyone who attended.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.